Hello, and is that maybe too loud? Welcome to St. Philip the Deacon. This is, besides the concert, this is on a normal day that we have a program called The Conversation here at St. Philip the Deacon. It's always the second Tuesday of the month, and the two things are intentionally aligned. So we are very happy to welcome the Synod Senior Band with us today. And I'm very happy to welcome each of you here to St. Philip the Deacon. Delighted you are with us. After the concert, if you would like to walk over to Fellowship Hall, there's coffee and cookies afterwards. So if you would like to visit a little bit more, and you all are welcome to come too. Anyway, there's coffee and cookies in Fellowship Hall afterwards. Because this is the conversation, I generally do some commercial announcements, and I'm going to do the same thing. Next month in October, Nora Long, who's a member of the St. Philip the Deacon's music staff, is going to be our presenter, and she's going to talk about how hymns support us in worship. The music, the words, how they all kind of work together. So Nora Long is our presenter. In November, Doug Ullman will be with us. He is a photographer and a storyteller. He was with us a number of years ago, and he's going to be back. And in December, we'll have Christmas because it's Christmas. So that's what we'll do in December. A couple of church-wide announcements, though. And when you leave, if you want some other information, we do a lecture series here called the Faith and Life Lecture Series. The brochure for it looks like this. Dr. Bishop Curry's on the front of it. He was our speaker last May. It's a wonderful series. We kick off with Mark Birch on October 26th. And he is the canon from the Westminster Abbey in London, and he is coming for the presentation. He was responsible for the coordination and participated in the Queen's funeral and the King's coronation. So it should be a very fabulous presentation. We are also kicking off a new music series called the Herald Music Series. There is a blue flyer like this out in the narthex. So if you're interested in that, there's the lineup from that. We have the National Lutheran Choir coming, the St. Paul's Chamber Orchestra, Cantus, Chuck Lazarus, and the Uptown Brass. So many of those are ticketed, though, so make sure you look at that brochure. And then there's a big postcard like this in orange, and this has information about events coming up here at the church in October, both classes, a trip to southern Minnesota to visit some churches, the Jamboree, we have the 1st of October, the Faith and Life series. Anyway, this is a bunch of different ways you can participate in the life here. Enough of the commercials. Thank you for your indulgence. I am, with that, going to introduce you to Nick Van Dies. Did I say it? And let him take it from here. So welcome, and welcome to the Synod Band.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Let's have a conversation. The nominal title of our program is E Pluribus Unum, which was the nation's original motto, which means out of many, one. And what we're going to do today is we're going to present a variety of music, many of which has some kind of ethnic or cultural diversity and points of view. And we want to show how music has been a unifying force in our society, something that we need quite desperately right now. And before we kind of get into the ethnic thing, we got to play our big piece. The next piece we're going to play is called Pageant. It was written in 1953 by Vincent Persichetti, who was a very noted composer of the day. He was head of the composition department at Juilliard School. So he's really good. And this piece is kind of in two parts. The first part is a very lovely chorale. The three notes you hear in the beginning from the flutes is kind of the germ, the material out of which everything else grows. And then in the parade section, you hear all these forces coming together. It's kind of like there's a parade going there, and you're walking up to the street they're going on, and you're looking at the parade through the heads of the people in front of you till you get to the point where you can see the whole parade. The last chord, urban legend has it that the last chord has all 12 notes of the chromatic scale. It doesn't. It only has 9. But the last chord is an allegory for our society right now in 2023. If you want to ask me afterwards, what were you talking about? I'll say it, but I don't want to go into it now. This is Pageant by Vincent Persichetti. like Colonel Pickering says in My Fair Lady, he's describing a Wagner opera that he and the lead went to. That's a rackety one. Okay. Now, at the turn of the 19th century, bands, concert bands, were kind of social media, music media of the day. The great professional band would come into town and they would play the latest operatic medley or show tune medley or marches, and the townspeople would come to the village square and get the latest in music. And there were some really wonderful professional bands. Pat Gilmore and Arthur Pryor and John Philip Sousa had one, Herbert Clark had one. And with these bands, one of the things they would have the featured soloist. The first clarinet, so-and-so's band featuring this guy on clarinet and this person on trumpet and so forth. And in the day, the early 1900s, the premier cornet soloist with these bands was a man named Herbert L. Clark. And he was the virtuoso trumpet player of the day. And he wrote many trumpet solos that people in the trumpet section have played throughout their career, because if you could play a Herbert Clark solo, you were pretty good. Well, he wrote one piece called Side Partners, and he wrote it for himself and another player in the band. Well, we have two side partners in our trumpet section, Peter and Nancy McGuire. And we figured that McIntyre, senior moment. We're all friends. We have that, right? Okay, all right. So we figure if they can't work it out, how to play it, and we'll just try to keep up with them. This is Side Partners by Herbert L. Clark. So from the early 1900s, you can see kind of a time of innocence and just joy and fun in coming down to the village square and seeing what's going on. Now, fast forward about 40 years to the 60s and the British invasion. And the next thing is a Beatles medley. It's going to be conducted by our associate conductor, Phil Ron. And if he wants to say something about it, he will. I have to go back and do my dues in the percussion section.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story. You know, when Nick couldn't play trumpet anymore, they gave him 2 drumsticks, put him in the percussion section. And when he couldn't keep time with his drumsticks, they gave him 1 stick and made him the director. Just couldn't resist. Okay, so people of a certain age listen to a lot of Beatles, right? So the puzzle for the arranger is to decide what songs to put in the arrangement. So there's a whole bunch of the songs. So my challenge to you is to see how many Beatles songs you hear. Well, they're all Beatles songs, but how many of them are there in this song? Okay, well, Nick's coming up. Really, the only reason they let me direct this band is because I tell Ole and Lena jokes. So I got a quick one for you. So Sven was telling his buddy Ole, he says, oh, look at this. I got these new hearing aids. They're really nice. Top of the line. I think they cost me $2,000. Ole says, oh, those look really good. So what brand are they? And Sven looks at his wrist and he says, oh, it's 3:15.
I never know what to say after he conducts. I've been practicing long and hard on my one-stick technique. And I attended a workshop at the University of Minnesota this year for a wind band conducting workshop. And one of the clinicians talked to a good conductor who had the beat patterns and he knew what he wanted, so he had some experience. And he said, okay, now can you rehearse the band without stopping? I've been working on all this whole season trying to do that. We're a work in progress, but it's really kind of fun to try. Okay, so the Beatles, a lot of people cared a lot about that music, and in our demographic, that's very good. In a time of division with Vietnam and kind of stuff going on, they were kind of a unifying force. Now, my wife and I took a Viking river cruise. We flew into Paris. We drove through the Champagne country of France to the Mosel River, and we went down the Mosel, and we came up the Rhine. And as we were driving through Luxembourg, we stopped for 30 minutes at one of 6 military cemeteries in Europe. This one was very near where the Battle of the Bulge was in the last, the end days of the Second World War. And they had a center in there, and my stepdaughter said, I wonder if Uncle Fred, because he was in the Battle of the Bulge and was buried over there. I wonder if this is his cemetery. So they went in there. Yes, there's a Fred Fisher from South Dakota. He's in section 8, row 1, number 169. So we're walking through this immaculately kept cemetery. There's probably 1,000 crosses or so in the area. And so we're walking down the line, and we're in row 1 in section 8, and we're walking along, and there's a headstone for Private so-and-so from West Virginia, and here's a headstone from Corporal so-and-so from Ohio, and here's another private, and we're looking at all those people, and we're seeing nobody from a blue state, nobody from a red state. They're from the United States. So we'd like to play a piece called Air for Band. And if you listen to the harmony of the piece, sometimes it's together, sometimes it's a little tense. Listen to the conversation amongst the instruments as we play Air for Band. The next piece is a piece called Hebraic Fantasy. And this piece has a little short, slow introduction, and then it's a dance. And you can kind of channel the wedding dance in Fiddler on the Roof for this. When the dance part comes, you will dee-dee-dum-bum, dee-dee-dum-bum. It's like two people get out, everybody's standing around, on the edge of the thing looking, who's going to go first? Well, there they go now. So they see them, and then, oh, well, then I can get in. And then pretty soon, everybody's in, and they're having a good time. Hebraic Fantasy. So The next two pieces that we're going to play are, so you can see contributions to E pluribus unum out of many different strains come together to make us good. Now, the next two pieces are kind of flips of the same coin. It has to do with us and our children. The first piece is called Mini Suite, and it is a piece written by a wonderful American composer, Morton Gould, and for his daughters, Deborah and Abby, I think were their names, before they got to teenage years, when they had their birthday, he would write them a piano piece. And when they were young, they appreciated that. So he compiled 3 of these short little pieces into a suite for band. The first one is Happy Birthday March. The second one, what's it called? Yeah, what you said. and the third one is Bell Carol. And on this river cruise that we took, we happened to be in Easter in a German city, and there were people lined up 4 blocks to get into the big cathedral. And there's this square. You can imagine the big, the European apartment buildings, around the square. And the big bells in this cathedral start chiming. Ding, dong, ding, dong, ding, dong. Quasimodo was going crazy on the rope. And they get going, and then they have a carol on, ding, dong, 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 ding, dong, dong, ding, and that's going on. And then 2 blocks back behind us, there's another church, and they start doing. And pretty soon, the whole square, the air inside is just loaded with these big bell sounds. So transport yourself to Easter in a city in Germany when we get to the third movement. So the child inspired the composer to write for her. The flip side of this, we're now going to play a spiritual called Wade in the Water. And I won't play the tune beforehand, and I won't sing it for you. Everything, you probably recognize it. But when we finish, I will explain the story behind Wade in the Water and what we do for our children. Wade in the Water. You probably figured out the tune. Now, Wade in the Water came, it was either composed, but more likely sprung up organically like folk songs do in the mid-1800s. The verses to the chorus. The first verse is, "Who are the children dressed in red?" They're the children Moses led. Who are the children dressed in white? They're the children of the Israelites. Who are the children dressed in blue? They're the children that passed on through, all people looking for their home. If you were taking your family north on the Underground Railroad to escape slavery, and you heard someone singing, "Wade in the water," that's what you did. You took your children into the water so the slaver dogs couldn't track them. Tell me, black history is not important. So, we're kind of fractured in politics and blah, blah, blah. There was a Minnesota guy named Bob Dylan back in the day who had a way to speak to us. His songs are very important, and they still have a lot of resonance. The three tunes in this medley, the medley is called Winds of Change. And the first section is Times Are Changing. The second section is Tambourine Man. And the last one is Blowing in the Wind. So we have a lot of challenges. If you think back to the 60s, there was a lot of social unrest. It had a let's improve things. I don't like what's going on with this or that. Let's improve things. Okay? Well, we're at an inflection point, the same thing. Can we improve things, or will we allow fear to divide us? The answer is blowing in the wind.